If you spend any time with the church community, you know that they're often known for how they nurture not just the soul, but the body too. Those church potlucks. Today, a whole different twist on that church kitchen, one with a commercial license, an incubator for startups. Expert Connections starts now. Churches are known for fueling body, mind, and spirit, and the spirit of entrepreneurship. Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton. Today, we are taking you inside a church that is nurturing creativity and innovation for budding food entrepreneurs. Our Startup Connections expert today, Pastor Tom Arthur of Sycamore Creek Church in Lansing, Michigan. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you, Julie. I'm glad to be here.
I should say welcome back. This is part 2 of our interview with you. You can jump over after this interview to the last part of the first part of our interview with Tom, where he's talking about Stage One, this brand new renovated church in Lansing that is actually going to be a 3-parter. It has a food incubator, a kitchen that we're going to talk about here in this episode. It has a performing arts center, and of course, a worship area for church itself. Tom, as we talk about this kitchen, this licensed, fully commercial kitchen that you are building in Stage One, I have to say, little story here. I spent a lot of time, growing up in church. I spent a lot of time in our church kitchen.
Yeah.
As a middle schooler, I'm sure you can imagine this, I once put together an Easter Sunday newscast. I was going to be out of town that year. And so I was, 8th grade Julie, all excited about, using a video camera, the ones you used to put the tapes in, and you could actually type the letters right onto the the screen. Oh yeah, I had one of those. I was going to be out of town, but our middle school, youth group always did Sunday morning service, but I was going to miss it. And so I couldn't miss it. And so we ended up recording a newscast that played out live on Sunday morning at church while I was in Florida with my family that year. In our church kitchen, I actually recorded the Last Supper with Jesus and his disciples. Pretty cool endeavor. That's not quite what you're talking about using your church kitchen for, but I
love the creativity, though. I mean, you never know what teenagers are going to do with a video camera.
Right. And so here you are providing them this creative space, not just for the teenagers, but for the budding entrepreneurs, those where maybe a commercial kitchen to get started is too expensive or other needs. So I have to know, what inspired you to build this incubator at your church?
Well, so we talk about, as a church, we hit different. And one of the ways that we hit different is we platform artists and entrepreneurs. And maybe it's worth going back and just reflecting a little bit on my own entrepreneurial history, because I tend to be much more I have an entrepreneurial spirit in me that a lot of pastors I don't think have. And that's not a bad thing. I think a lot of pastors are more kind of, I guess, care centered. Not that I'm uncaring, but that they're maybe like the caring professions, like social worker or counselor, or teacher, and that sort of thing. And I've always had this sort of business entrepreneurial creative spirit. And it goes back to the first thing I can think that I started was when I was in elementary school. I got a hamster, and I think my dad bought my first hamster. It was, it's just something that parents buy you for some reason, so you learn to take care of something. And I got the idea to get, I don't remember whether I had a male hamster or a female, but whatever it was, I got the opposite, so that I could breed them and sell hamsters. And so I started in, let's say 3rd grade, I started a hamster breeding business. And I also was running, I was like the paper boy. This is like the old school paper boy, ride around on my bike and throw papers on people's driveways. And it turned out that I was really good at breeding hamsters, and I was really bad at the business side of it, or the sales side of it. And I ended up with 16 hamsters that I had one batch of babies. I left the babies in together too long, and the babies had babies. And then I had
Oh
16
boy.
hamsters, and they were eating me out of house and home. And all my paper money was going to feed them. And then one day they got out, and I came home from school, and there were 16 hamsters hiding and running around in the house. So that was my first failed attempt at starting a business or being entrepreneurial. But I started a lawn mowing business as a teenager. My first real job was to open a Fazoli's. So I got the opportunity, like the fast food Italian, and there was a Fazoli's that came in, and I got hired before it opened, and so I got to see the whole process of what it was like to open a fast food restaurant. And then you can just move on. Like there's all these things that I've started. It's been more in my adult life, like nonprofits and starting. So I started the C.S. Lewis Festival up in Petoskey, which is still, it's like in its 23rd year. And I was kind of one of the key founders of it to begin with. And then when I came here, I'm the second pastor following the founding pastor of a new church. So it's a very entrepreneurial spirit. So as any entrepreneur knows, entrepreneurship really runs on relationships. And you're getting out, you're meeting people, you're hearing what they're excited about, what they're doing. And then I like to say, like, it's like a puzzle that has pieces, and there's all the pieces, like the people you know, and the needs that exist, and the resources that are over here, and your own like imagination and people's passions. But it's a puzzle that life is not a puzzle that just gets put together in one picture. Like it can be put together in lots of different ways. So, and then you may end up with new puzzle pieces. And so over time, I've been here in Lansing for 15 years. I got a lot of puzzle pieces on the table. And some of those puzzle pieces were that we would run, like we started the South Lansing Art Festival, because there's not a lot of people that are focused on bringing the arts community or focusing on artists in South Lansing. So at our South Lansing campus, we started the South Lansing Art Festival. In the process of doing that, we met all these vendors who are trying to like start businesses. And one of them that we met was a young woman named Liz Kruger, who was trying to start a baking business, Honey Bun Bakery. And she's selling at farmers markets and things like festivals and so on. File that away. I know Liz. I've met her. I know she's trying to start this business. And then 2 years ago, this church came to us and they said, hey, we're struggling after COVID. We got 15 to 20 people. Would you adopt us? And I said, yeah, let's go. Let's talk about it. Let's take a look. And in the process of talking through, I found out that their building had a licensed kitchen in it. So now, like, my imagination just puts together, okay, Liz needs like a kitchen, or maybe she does. I don't know. Maybe she wants to get out. Maybe she just wants to stay in her home kitchen and keep her business at that level, or maybe she wants to grow it. But the next time I saw Liz at the farmer's market, I said, hey, it may be that we ending up with this church with a licensed kitchen. Our South Lansing campus, the kitchen is in horrible like state. And our culture as a church is usually to cater everything. We're not, you talked about churches, the old ladies in churches spend a lot of time cooking meals for everybody. And we're a younger church, so we spend a lot of money like buying pizza and Subway and whatever, like
and supporting small businesses. I got you.
Small businesses and Honey Bun.
That's when anytime I order food out, I'm like, I'm supporting a business right now.
Exactly. That's what we like to tell ourselves. But we all have kids. Like nobody wants to like spend a bunch of time in the kitchen. We just want like to show up and feed our kids something, and then build community around that food. So I talked to Liz and I said, we're getting this building. It's got a licensed kitchen in it. Would you be interested in using it? And like a true entrepreneur, I'm not thinking through any of the logistics of what this is going to mean. I'm just thinking, I've got this resource, like, let's just dive in and we'll figure it out along the way. And Liz came back to me a couple of weeks later and said, I'm very interested. Fast forward now, she's been in there for, about a year. She's tripled her business. She's now in Middle Market, or Middle Village, downtown Lansing. They're looking at storefronts in downtown Lansing. The space has given her like the foundation she needed to grow. And then for us, we're like, okay, we get to make an impact in people's physical lives, like to make a real impact in their financial life. And to us, that is spiritual in body and mind and like your job, that everything is spiritual. So this is just living out our mission, and it's sharing our space.
And talking about these connections, of course, really hits home for me here on Expert Connections.
Yeah.
And talking about how to really give people that footing, that foundation to be able to build and grow from there. Tell me, what are some of the benefits of this shared space that you have with the Incubator Kitchen?
Yeah. So there's a lot of fun synergies when you put, so we've thought about this new campus that we're starting. It's up across from Eastwood Town Center. It's right across from the new McAllister's Deli. There's two churches there. There's Faith Church and there's Sycamore Creek, and we're the one with the big red roof. And when we remodeled the building to be a performing arts center, and then we opened up the kitchen to be Incubator Kitchen. By the way, we also have another person, Lee's Sweet Teas, who is going to be using the kitchen here shortly. So we're going to have a tea maker who makes herbal and fruit teas there. But there's a lot of synergies that happen when you put under one roof. Essentially, you can think of like what we're doing here. It's like Riverwalk, the Allen Center, or a part of the Allen Center, because the Allen Center does an amazing amount of stuff. Like they're a whole community development organization, but a little part of the Allen Center and a church. You put all those under one roof, and there's these synergies that start to happen. So, for example, Sunday morning we need like treats, and now we have a baker. In fact, I've got the easy button on ordering anything for any meeting I need for church. If I need cookies, or even like we adopt the local school, and on the Spruce Up Day, I just said, Liz, I need 100 cookies for everybody who's there, and I brought cookies, and it's so easy. Like, and there's a synergy there of when we need those things. But then you're gonna have these audiences coming in to see musicals and theater and performances. And I forgot to mention that the Lansing Community College jazz program, the Dart Auditorium, is being remodeled right now. So they're looking for a space to use. And the professor that runs that is in communications with me about all of that. And so you're going to have all these people coming in to watch these shows and this music. And that means there's an audience for food and sweet teas and cookies and baked goods. And Honey Bun has the best honey buns. They've been voted the best honey buns in Lansing by, I don't know, whoever votes. I feel like now I just ended up in Elf.
Anyone who eats honey buns knows they have the best.
Yeah, whoever, that they're the best. And essentially, like for us, we get a professional kitchen out of it. Like we get professional bakers, we get people who make us stuff. Like we just had this big camp out, and I said, Liz, we need breakfast for that morning, and that was the easy button. Like, oh my gosh, the breakfast that she made for people who camped out and came early, it was fabulous. And really, like, the relationship is so tight that all I do is just send her a text. I need breakfast for 50 people on Sunday. Can you do that? Yes. It's zero red tape. And there's just a lot of trust there. So,
well, an easy button for you, and also for her, access to now 50 people who are going to taste her. That's what the startup community is looking for, is to get their foot in the door, to get their products out, in this case, food, into the hands of people, the stomachs of people who try it, love it, and want more. And then that gives them the ability to grow the startup.
Yeah. And she was able, we did this whole boot camp. We brought my coach in, who's a startup coach. He's helping me start this church. And he did a startup boot camp, and she participated in it. And John Reich, who's on the board of the Lansing, what is it? Elfco. I can't forget, whatever it is. It's the co-op in the Allen Center. That's the little grocery store there. And John met Liz, and Elfco was looking for a baker, like a local baker to support, and they were able to connect. So now she's selling her stuff through Elfco. Like, and because it's a licensed kitchen, if she was just doing it in her home, she wouldn't be able to provide it to stores. She could sell it at like farmers markets under whatever the cottage business laws are. I don't remember the details of that. I'm a pastor, not a lawyer. But entrepreneurs need people. Churches have people. Entrepreneurs need word of mouth. Churches have word of mouth. And then when you throw in performing arts and community theater, those are people. That's word of mouth. Boom. It's a perfect match.
I work with a lot of startups, as you know, through Startup Grind Lansing, through Connections. These connections are, and the resources are exactly what, as you're describing, that startups need, that entrepreneurs need. And so I can hear the tangibles that you're talking about, these connections to resources, a physical kitchen to be able to use. Tell me about some of the non-tangibles. What do you see? You've talked a little bit to me about the synergies that you see happening, and what, as a church community, I would imagine that there's some aspect on the spiritual side of the soul journey that also goes on as you're seeing the food being made in the kitchen. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, wow, that's a spectacular question as well. If you watch the press conference where Sarge, who is Liz's husband, Liz couldn't be at our press conference, so she sent her husband. And Liz says Sarge is better anyway in front of cameras. And Sarge says in that press conference, he says, as a queer atheist, I tend to stay away from churches. But he said Sycamore Creek is more Christian than most churches I know. He said they don't have to preach loud because they preach with their actions. And I've loved meeting Sarge. I've loved getting to know him over the year that they've been in there, and Liz I've known longer than that. But I mean, that's like, I joke sometimes, but then this is sort of a rough metaphor, but that's like cocaine to the pastor's soul. Like when you hear stuff like that, that's what we live for, is that, well, one, we're LGBTQIA affirming church. So Honey Bun is a very queer friendly church or bakery. So to us, we're supporting marginalized groups. And that's part of that's part of spirituality for us. That's part of faith. It's part of following Jesus. He's an atheist. He doesn't even believe in God. And that's totally, we're fine with that. Like we're not just sharing our space with people who share all the values with us. We'd share it with anybody. I do think that I could go really deep with this, and probably bore all your listeners, but at the center of the Christian faith and practice is a meal. And it's called different things in different churches. It could, like in the Catholic Church, it might be called Eucharist, or sometimes it's called the Lord's Supper, or sometimes it's called communion. Eucharist comes from Greek, which means Thanksgiving. So it should be, a lot of people experience the whole communion thing as this sort of dour, like you're confessing your sins, yada yada. But Eucharist comes from a Greek word that means like gratitude and thanksgiving. So it's like a joyful thing. And of course, that's some of those joyful moments in my life are around a meal. And communion is a sort of, it's not a full meal, because usually you get like a little piece of a wafer and a little like shot of wine or something. But when we did church in a pub, we did church in a pub at Buddy's in Holt for, I don't know, many years. And then COVID like shut everything down, and we've been rebuilding it. But at Buddy's, when we would do communion, I would ask the waitresses, can you bring me out some bread? And can you bring me out a glass of wine, a glass of grape juice? But everybody's eating fries and hamburgers, and there's lots of laughter. And it's not this quiet like thing. It's like this sort of raucous, like entertaining, enjoy, like there's community happening in that space, and people are building relationships, and they're maintaining friendships, and they're supporting each other, and they're pointing each other to God, and they're like, they're helping each other. And it's all around that food. And that, so to me, that always felt like the most genuine, authentic expression of communion or Lord's Supper or Eucharist, when I was doing it in the back room of Buddy's with the waitresses, like weaving in and out, like taking people's orders or cleaning up dishes or whatever. And really, like, even though it was the bread and the wine or juice, we always offered juice because you get people who are sober, who are maybe on a long process of being sober, and so you got to have options there. I'd always joke, I'd say, okay, this person's holding the wine, this person's holding the juice, so we know that the saints are going to go over here to the juice and all the sinners are going to come get the wine. It's a bad pastor joke, but really, like, even though there's that moment of people coming forward to receive communion, I always considered that the whole experience was a communion. It's a communion with each other. I mean, communion and community, like those are really closely related. A communion with each other, and a communion with God, and a communion with God's Spirit in like the room with all of us. And it's happened over fries and burgers and salads and beer and wine and the whole thing. And so back to the incubator kitchen, like in some ways you could say that that kitchen is the heart of our ministry, or theologically or spiritually. And when I needed communion bread recently, I just said to Liz, hey, could you make some bread for us for communion? And I was in our basement because upstairs stage one's not finished remodeling, and I was setting up for our worship where we've been previewing. And I heard Liz in the kitchen through the open door yell, "He is risen." And I was like, what are you talking about? And if you have any Christian background, you know, like that on Easter, you're supposed to say, the priest or pastor says, he is risen. Everybody yells, he is risen indeed. So Liz has picked that up somewhere. But when I walked in, what she's doing is she's got the oven open and she's looking that her bread for communion has risen. Like, and I absolutely love that pun. And I thought it was, but it was also like, it was a bad pun. It was good humor. Actually, it was a great pun. And it was also just this beautiful spiritual moment of sharing the oven to make the bread that is a symbol of the food and the communion that we all share together with one another and with God. Like, and I mean, I cry pretty easily. I'm even get a little, I can feel just a little bit like behind my tears or behind my eyes, like thinking about it in that way. It's hard to quantify exactly what that experience was.
It's also the beautiful kind of intersection of what's happening physically, tangibly for these startup businesses, and what your church is able to pour into them, whether directly, indirectly, whether it's in the kitchen, whether it's in the sanctuary, which will soon open. We'll talk about that in a moment. There's just this really cool community building aspect that's happening. And as you said, it doesn't get much more inclusive than being open to literally everyone. So tell me about this grand opening that's coming up in just a couple of weeks.
So I've started a lot of things over the years, and a lot of festivals and a lot of gatherings. And this grand opening, September 28th, October 1st, is the biggest thing that I've ever been a part of starting. And the reason for it is because stage one is a partnership between Sycamore Creek and the local community theater arts and the arts community in general. And when I started sitting down with Chad Swan-Badgerow, who is the founder of Peppermint Creek Theater, and he's also the artistic director. Chad's relationships in the arts community are huge. And Chad is a member and a partner. Chad and his husband are members and partners of Sycamore Creek. I sat down with Chad, and pretty soon we had not just a afternoon like event, we had a whole weekend. And there's a lot of
long weekend
spirit.
Because your weekend starts Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. And I've had my own like connections. Like I helped Dave Smith start Startup Grind, and so I have some connections in the business community and entrepreneurial community. COVID kind of kicked me out of that for a while, but it's been fun to get back into that and to connect with you and back with Startup Grind and see how that's grown since its inception many years ago, that I got to see and be a part of helping. But so Thursday, September 28th, the Lansing Chamber of Commerce is doing the ribbon cutting, and we've got Honey Bun is going to be providing free treats, and maybe Lee's sweet teas will be up and running by then, and maybe we'll have that as well. Magnificent Photo Booth, which is a local photo booth company, is going to be there for all of our events all weekend long, but they'll be there that night. Consumers Credit Union is sponsoring them, so that's like, when we've done this arts community, we've got all these corporate sponsors are now interested in participating in this. There'll be a press conference for all that. So if you're in the business community, that may be the thing you want to go to. But wait, there's more. Friday night, Blaine Krause is going to be here. He's the understudy for Hamilton and Burr right now, touring in Hamilton. Word is that maybe he's playing Hamilton in next season. He's going to be doing a private, intimate concert Friday night at stage one, and it's a catered dinner by Soup Spoon. And that's a ticketed. You can get tickets for any events at stageone.theater. And so that's Friday night. That's going to be spectacular. I'm so excited about that. Saturday, the Lansing Arts Council in the afternoon we're doing a tour of the facility. We're going to have a panel discussion about the state of arts in Lansing and where Stage One fits into all of that. Honey Bun's going to provide the treats for that. And then Saturday night may be my favorite part. I mean, Friday night's going to be spectacular. Thursday's going to be spectacular. But Saturday night is our black tie red carpet gala. And it's so pull out all of the stuff that you don't get a chance to wear to anywhere in Lansing, your evening gowns, your tuxedos, your fancy duds. And it is going to be Lansing's best and brightest performing on Stage One. And we're gonna have hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and there's literally a red carpet you're gonna get to walk, a step and repeat, like the photo booth, and everybody dressed to the nines. Sunday morning is our first big grand opening worship service as a church, so we're launching Saturday morning with that. And then Sunday afternoon, Hope Central Urban Arts and Anna Maria Horn are going to do Lansing's upcoming best and brightest youth performances on Stage One. On Sunday afternoon, we're going to have free barbecue lunch. Everything is free except Friday night and Saturday night. Those are both ticketed events. You can get tickets at stageone.theater, and otherwise everything else is free. It's all open to the community. It is a bash all weekend long. I've never done anything. I'm probably going to be exhausted by the end of the weekend. But
I was going to say, block your calendars Thursday through Sunday, and then maybe mark off Monday to sleep to catch on that whole rush. This sounds incredible, Tom. And a little bit of something for everyone, including those touch points, even on the youth in the community that you mentioned Sunday afternoon. So what an incredible opportunity for people to come together and see what you've been working on. Check out Stage One at the grand opening. We'll link to all of that information, and give us one more time the website for tickets.
It's Stage One, and that's spelled one, STAGEONE.theater.
All right, awesome. We will link to that below. Tom, keep us posted as Stage One opens. We can't wait to see what's in store for all of these different aspects of the new center. It's been so great to have you on the show. Not once,
it's been wonderful,
but twice. Tom, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, if you missed the first interview, you can jump over to part 1 on Stage One right at the end of this video. That is all for this episode of Expert Connections. Catch that second interview by clicking on your screen. And while you're clicking around, make sure to click subscribe. I'm Julie Holton. We'll see you next time.